Chapter 1. The Super Thigh Who is Short of Money. Wake up, wake up. He's really awake. Oh my God. His eyes are moving. God. Jesus. Hey, Bill. I can't believe you really saved him. God bless you. Finally. Scrooge, can you hear me? When Luo Yong tried hard to open his eyes, he heard a large group of people around him chattering in English. The sound was very noisy and gave Luo Yong a headache. He managed to open his eyes. Well, a large group of Europeans were forming a circle, surrounding him in the middle, with their necks stretched out. At this time, the noon sun shone through the gap between the circle of heads and hit Luo Yong's face. The sun was so strong that Luo Yong just opened his eyes a crack and had to close them again. At the same time, he wanted to raise his hands to block the too strong sun. However, he failed to raise his hand. On the contrary, this action made him dizzy and almost passed out again. The stretcher is here. Be careful. John, help me lift his head. Be careful. Don't use too much force. Carl, lift his hips, not from the waist, from the hips. You idiot. Don't you even know where the hips are? Be gentle. You will hurt him again if you do this. Luo Yong felt himself being carefully lifted up by several people. Only then did he realize that his whole body was hurting. Luo Yong lay in bed for several days. During these few days, he worked hard to figure out one thing, that is, he unfortunately became a member of the time-traveling army. Very unfortunate? Yes, unfortunately. Many people think that time travel is a low-risk, high-yield business. Look, which poor loser didn't immediately get a set of protagonist templates after traveling through time and have good luck ever since? If you want to practice Kung Fu, an old man will appear holding some god-level secrets, kowtow, and begging you to learn. His attitude is 1,000 times better than that of the people's teachers in schools in this plane who beg you to study hard. Are you too tired and don't want to practice hard? It doesn't matter. Grandpa will beg you to let him give you all his hundreds and thousands of years of skill. Want a beautiful woman? That was even more shocking, and immediately a lot of top-notch beauties came over to me, from Lolita to royal sisters, from innocent girls to mature wives. They all came over to me. Anyway, everyone just bring your dowry, bring your sister, and come on the cloud boat. But this is not necessarily the case. It's like speculating in stocks or betting on stones. Everyone hears stories about successful people. As for those unlucky people who jumped off buildings, who cares who they are? And the danger of traveling is actually much greater than stock trading and gambling. Just don't show it, such as a certain nympho woke up and found that she had traveled through time and became a charming beauty. She was also good at poetry, calligraphy, and painting. Just when she was about to stage a wonderful harem story, someone suddenly came to urge her, "Why don't you go out and toast to General Wang?" Or a certain loser woke up and found that he had become literate and proficient in music. He was now in a square, with a guqin in front of him. He was very elegant and played a piece of music smoothly, shocking the whole audience with his skills. In the middle of the beautiful moment, a military commander said, "Is the Guangling's song over?" Such unlucky things really happened in ancient times when social productivity was extremely low and communication was difficult due to the changes in pronunciation between ancient and modern times. If you think about it carefully, what is the difference between it and throwing you directly into the Democratic Republic of the Congo or Rwanda and other black African regions? It took Luo Yong a few days to figure out that he had now traveled to the United States in 1855 and became a little kid named Scrooge McDonald, who was just 11 years old. A few days ago, I climbed a tree to dig out a bird's nest and fell down, falling to his death. Fortunately, the neighbor Bill Rockefeller, who is said to be proficient in medical skills, of course, some people said, he was a liar selling special medicines for curing cancer, happened to be at home, and with some help, he was rescued. Of course, Scrooge's parents are now extremely grateful to Bill. I felt extremely ashamed that I believed in rumors before, thinking that Bill was a charlatan with no moral values, and had even slandered his reputation in front of others more than once. After Bill revived Scrooge, Scrooge's father, Joseph, apologized to Bill sincerely in front of everyone. Bill was indeed knowledgeable. When Scrooge had strange phenomena in the next few days, such as suddenly not recognizing people, such as his accent becoming particularly weird, Joseph asked a priest to find a priest to see if there was anything unclean at work, and asked his neighbor Bill for advice. Bill asked Joseph to relax. He told Joseph that it was not surprising that people who injured their heads would often have similar symptoms. This statement was also recognized by Pastor Stephen, who came later, so Joseph and his wife Laura were relieved. On the one hand, they admired Bill very much, but on the other hand, they were not surprised by Luo Yong's various eccentricities after that. The most they could say was, "Poor Scrooge, I hope he gets better soon." A week later, Scrooge McDonald was finally able to get up and go out. After spending 2 days running around, Luo Young Scrooge was finally convinced that he had really traveled to the United States in the 19th century. It should be said that Luo Yang's luck is pretty good among time travelers. Although he could not wear it into the homes of any big aristocrats or wealthy people, his family background was still moderate. His father, Joseph, was a good shoemaker. The shoes he made were beautiful in appearance, comfortable to wear, strong and durable, and had a very good reputation in the neighborhood. Relying on Joseph's craftsmanship, the family's life was pretty good. Every other week, the family can still eat meat. Speaking of which, it is better than the neighbor Bill's house. As the youngest son, Scrooge is the most beloved child in the family. Whether it is his father Joseph, his mother Laura, or his eldest brother Carol, who has started to help his father make leather shoes, they all love him very much. But this is not what makes Luo Yong most satisfied. This kind of living standard, no matter what, is still not comparable to Luo Yong's original living standard. What really satisfied Luo Yong was his neighbor Xian Rockefeller, and Luo Yong is now sure that this Rockefeller is the Rockefeller who will become a legend. Neighbor Bill Rockefeller had 3 sons and 2 daughters, actually 3, but one of them died at the age of 2. Their eldest son was named John, their second son was named William, and their third son was named Frank. Their eldest daughter was named Lucy, and their second daughter was named Mary. Isn't this the Rockefeller family that will become famous in the world in the future? According to history, John Rockefeller will become the oil king. At its most powerful time, the Standard Oil Company he founded controlled more than 80% of the oil in the United States and more than half of the world's oil. And he himself became the first ultra-rich man in American history with personal assets exceeding 1 billion US dollars. By the time of his death, his personal wealth was as high as 1.4 billion US dollars. This $1.4 billion is not a worthless $1.4 billion in the 21st century. The ratio of this money to the GDP of the United States, which had become the world's largest economic power at that time, was as high as 1 hour 65 minutes. Calculated based on the same ratio as the total GDP of the United States in 2013 of 16.56 trillion US dollars, his personal wealth would be as high as about 255 billion US dollars. Of course, the Rockefeller family has not yet reached its peak. The future richest man in the United States, oil tycoon John Rockefeller, is still in high school. But isn't this a good opportunity? As long as you hold on to this thigh, you will have great hope for the future. Scrooge is 4 years younger than John Rockefeller, but because of his good family conditions, Scrooge was younger than John when he started studying. As a result, the two of them are now studying in the same middle school. It's just that John is a grade higher than Scrooge. We used to go to school together every day. After resting at home for another 2 days and confirming that there were no problems, Scrooge finally went to school. After breakfast, his neighbor John Rockefeller came to call him. "Scrooge, you should go to school today." As he said this, John helped Scrooge pick up his school bag, and the two of them walked out together. "My mother asked me to take care of you on the way. He is always worried that my father is unreliable." "Well, let's not talk about this. I heard that you have forgotten a lot of things. Do you still remember the things you learned in school?" "I forgot some, but most of them I remember. Even if I don't remember, just learn it again. I think as long as you work hard, there is no reason why you can't learn well." Scrooge, who was an engineer in his previous life, believed that things in American middle schools in the 19th century should not be difficult to deal with. John Rockefeller suddenly stopped. He stared at Scrooge for a long time and then said, "Strange, can a fall really make a person completely different? You are much calmer than before, and much more confident. It seems that you have grown up all of a sudden." It's a weird feeling to see a 16-year-old kid saying that he has grown up all of a sudden. Although he knew that the half-year-old child in front of him would be the richest man in American history in the future, and even though he knew that he would drop out of middle school this year, enter a business school to study accounting, and then embark on the path of creating a legend, Scrooge still felt strange. The walk to the school was very long, and it took almost half an hour to walk there. The two of them were talking while walking. "Well, Scrooge, there is one thing I wonder if you still remember?" John Rockefeller said suddenly. "What's the matter?" Scrooge asked. "I know you forgot." John Rockefeller shook his head and then said, "I don't plan to continue studying in middle school. I plan to go to a business school in the city to learn accounting. I think this is more practical for me. You know, our family situation is not good. My father has never been reliable, although he performed well when saving you this time. In short, as the eldest son, I must take on the responsibility of supporting the family as soon as possible." "I seem to know a little bit." Scrooge frowned, as if he was thinking hard. "I seem to remember that the tuition fees for this kind of school are not cheap. John, do you have that much money?" "That's it. It costs 40 US dollars. My father promised to lend me 40 US dollars, but he asked me for 15% interest. Damn, this interest rate is much higher than the bank. He just bullied me and couldn't borrow money from the bank. I want to know if you can ask your family to lend me some money, just a part of it. When I start working, I can pay you back at 11% of the bank's interest, no, a little higher than the bank's interest." John Rockefeller looked into Scrooge's eyes expectantly. Chapter 2: The Idea of Dropping Out of School. "John, although our family situation may be slightly better off than yours, after all, my father and my eldest brother make the money in our family. However, 40 US dollars is not a small number for us. I personally don't have that much money, so I can only ask my parents for help. I don't know how much money they can give, but I will try my best to persuade them. But, John, you have to tell me first, if you get this money, how do you plan to pay it back after you finish your business school studies?" "Scrooge, you have really changed a lot. You actually think about so many problems. When I was your age, I couldn't think about so many things." John Rockefeller said, "If I want to be my own boss and start a company in the future, I will definitely find you as my partner." Guys, I've done some research. There are many new companies opening now, and it's relatively easy to find other staff. However, there are relatively few people who can do accounting. Therefore, if I finish studying at the business school, it won't be a big problem to find a job. Nowadays, a person who has mastered basic accounting skills can generally get a monthly salary ranging from 5 to 6 US dollars in the first year. My monthly expenses were less than $2, so I could pay off the debt in just over a year. "That sounds good," said Scrooge. "I think I'm convinced by you. I'll convince my parents." At this time, the middle school had appeared not far in front of them. The two of them walked into the school gate and walked to the classroom of Scrooge's class. John Rockefeller handed the school bag that Scrooge had been carrying to Scrooge. "Okay, here we are. Oh, by the way, I haven't told anyone about this yet. Please keep it a secret for me." Scrooge nodded and walked into the classroom. At this time, there were already some people in the classroom, but the teacher hadn't come yet. As soon as Scrooge came in, the classroom immediately became lively. "Hey, Scrooge, I heard you idiot fell from the tree." A boy with some red freckles on his nose yelled first. "Scrooge, it seems that your leather is really strong." A boy with a light-colored head stretched out his hand, pinched Scrooge's face, and said, "Look, it's very thick." "Stop, Tom." A small boy stood up. "You bully even Patience. You really have no future at all." The light-haired child named Tom looked at the little man, curled his lips, and then said, "Carter, you really don't understand any humor. I was just joking with Scrooge. There is no harm." You are bullying Scoo to treat his illness. The little man named Carter said coldly. And you, Rom, you're the same. You're also a worthless thing who bullies patients. I don't want to compete with a guy like you, who has no sense of humor. The child with freckles on his nose also sat down angrily. The little man looked at Scrooge again and said, Scrooge, I heard that you broke your head and couldn't remember some things. Is that right? Yes, replied Scrooge. Then do you remember where you're sitting? Do you remember what our names are? Carter then asked. Scrooge shook his head. Don't remember anything? Carter shook his head. Then, do you remember how to do those damn math problems? You should still remember this, considering that there is no damn mathematical Olympiad in this era. Therefore, Scrooge is still very confident in solving middle school mathematics problems of this era. That's great. Carter smiled. Hurry up and catch up on what you haven't learned. The final exam in a month will be up to you. Okay, brothers, now I will give each of you 3 minutes to introduce yourself to our Scrooge. Well, let's start with me. My name is Carter. I have a strange disease, that is, I can't feel pain. Carter began to introduce himself. My biggest advantage is that I am strong and can fight. Except for physical education, my grades in all subjects are not very good. At most, I have just passed. If you have been with me for a long time, you will know that I am a person who is easy to deal with. After Carter introduced himself, he looked around the classroom and said, Tom, next you. Well, my name is Tom. In fact, we are old friends. Sometimes I like to joke around, but everyone knows that I mean no harm. Well, the final exam depends on you. Jessica, then you. My name is Jessica, and my dad is. Maybe it was because there were not many people studying at that time. Although people from 66 to 66 continued to come, the total number of classmates was not large. So this self-introduction ended just before class. The first lesson is mathematics, which Scrooge is best at. As expected, middle school mathematics in this era is actually very simple compared to today's Scrooge. It is so simple that Scrooge can tell the answer directly with just a glance. It was inevitable to lose focus in such a class. Scrooge supported his cheek with one hand and pretended to be looking at the blackboard, but he began to think about his future path in his heart. The Civil War seems to be about to break out, right? If I remember correctly, it seems to be around 1861. The war is definitely a good opportunity to make money. Think about the ways you can make money. First, it was speculation. If I remember correctly, Morgan's first unjust transaction didn't I make my fortune by reselling gold during the Civil War? But forget it, I'm not like Morgan, who can always know all kinds of inside information before going to Wall Street to speculate, and I don't even know how I died. Or is it reliable? Oil should be a good deal. At the beginning of the Civil War, agriculture in the South was gone, and there was no lamp oil for lighting in the cities. All ships were used for war, including whaling ships, so the whale blubber used as lubricant was gone. Almost all of these problems had to be solved by the extraction and refining of oil. Rockefeller relied on this family. If he hugged his thigh tightly, he should be able to get some glory. However, this guy Rockefeller, it seems that what he is best at in history is kicking partners out of the company, right? Even if you are a time traveler, there is no guarantee that such a day will not happen. How about just making weapons? Before he time traveled, he worked as an engineer at Norinco. Although the project he was mainly researching before time travel seemed a bit too advanced in today's era, he was still very familiar with firearms. As a side job of defrauding foreigners of money, he had bolt-action sniper rifles, pump-action shotguns, various automatic rifles, machine guns, and various copycat versions of automatic weapons. I am quite familiar with pistols and revolvers. As long as I have the first initial capital, it is not impossible to copy these things. I just don't know what the level of materials in this era is. However, considering that it will not take long, it seems that in 1866, the Germans created the Mauser rifle, completing the leap from modern rifles to modern rifles. From this point of view, even if it is difficult to make an automatic rifle, it is still possible to make an old-fashioned Mauser. Well, even the old-fashioned Mauser 1871 is much better than the muzzle-loading guns used by the Americans in the Civil War. However, it seems that breech-loading guns have always been rejected by some old-fashioned people. I remember that in Europe, a certain big shot even declared that he would rather lose the war than use an unmanly weapon like a breech-loading gun. Of course, it may be that these old antiques received money from businessmen who made muzzle-loading guns. If it is the latter, I am afraid that I will also encounter such a problem in the United States. If we don't solve it, we can't effectively use the war to make money. Otherwise, after this thing is built, sell it to the Southerners first. As long as the Southerners can beat the crap out of the Yankees with these things, the North will definitely purchase them in large quantities. What's the saying? An arms dealer who does not sell weapons to attack his own country is not a real arms dealer? Well, we must first let the Yankees shed enough blood, and then let the Southerners shed more blood, and then there will be a chance. Scrooge, answer this question. Scrooge, Scrooge, what are you doing? Just when Scrooge was thinking wildly, a voice rang in his ear. Math teacher Rodriguez was standing next to Scrooge. In fact, because Scrooge kept staring at the blackboard, teacher Rodriguez did not immediately notice that Scrooge was distracted. After he asked a slightly difficult question on the blackboard, he randomly clicked on a few students, but none of them could answer it, so teacher Rodriguez habitually called out Scrooge's name. After the shout, teacher Rodriguez realized that Scrooge was distracted. I was thinking. Scrooge was startled. Teacher Rodriguez's attitude softened, because he knew that Scrooge had just hit his head and seemed to have memory problems. In addition, he had missed so many classes. He might not be able to answer such a question immediately. His anger just now was actually just a habitual gesture. Facing those little bastards, if he didn't show anger out of habit, he simply couldn't suppress those guys. Oh, Scrooge, do you understand today's content? Teacher Rodriguez said gently. Well, that's all right, said Scrooge. Can you do the questions on the blackboard? Ah, the question on the blackboard? Scrooge quickly glanced at the blackboard. On the blackboard was a very common word question about degree, distance, and time. In the future, it would only be difficult for the upper grades of elementary school. 1 hour and 15 minutes. Scrooge came up with the answer almost instantly, but he did not say the answer. Instead, he shook his head. Right now, he didn't want to act too special. Well, it's okay, Scrooge. After all, you missed a lot of classes. Sit down and listen carefully, Teacher Rodriguez said. The first day of class passed uneventfully. Unlike other time travelers, Scrooge behaved very mediocrely and did not do anything to shock his friends. Because Scrooge knew that this was boring. His stage was not here. The Civil War was only 5.5 years away. He didn't have much time to waste in such a school. Maybe he should drop out and start a business like Rockefeller. Chapter 3: The First Transaction. After returning home, after dinner, the sky gradually darkened. Old Joseph lit an oil lamp in front of the table, as usual. Scrooge could do homework and read under the oil lamp, and old Joseph could continue his work with this light. His mother, Laura, also used the light to mend a pair of old socks, and the eldest brother Carol, who had been helping at home since middle school, used the light to look through the textbooks he had studied before. The middle school homework of this era was still a little too easy for Scrooge, and Scrooge finished it quickly. Then he stopped writing and looked at his father. Old Joseph was concentrating on waxing a pair of newly made boots at this time. His hands, which may have been working with leather for a long time, were stained with the wax, and under the dim light of the oil lamp, they also glowed with a color similar to cooked yellow leather. "Daddy, I'm done," said Scrooge. "Oh." Old Joseph raised his head and glanced at his youngest son. "Why are you going so fast today? Look, I haven't had time to finish these boots yet. Do you still want to read?" "No, father," replied Scrooge. "Uh, then go to bed early. You need more rest now." Old Joseph put down his boots, carefully covered the wax box, then wiped his hands on the apron hanging on his chest, and stood up from his workbench. "Father, I have something to talk to you about," said Scrooge. "John Rockefeller is still waiting for news about himself tomorrow." "Oh, what's the matter?" Old Joseph took out his old pipe, lit it on the oil lamp, took a puff, and then bent down and blew out the oil lamp. Although old Joseph's family could not afford to light the oil lamp, since Scrooge's homework had been completed, it was only a little he could save. As the warm orange light of the oil lamp disappeared, the entire room darkened in an instant. Fortunately, the moon just poked its head out of the window, spilling her silver light into the room. So the general things in the house can still be seen clearly. Old Joseph went to his rocking chair and sat down, took out his old pipe, and said to Scrooge, "Well, you tell me, I'm listening." "Dad, I want to know how much money our family has to live with." Scrooge thought about it and said this: "What? Do you need to pay anything more in school?" Old Joseph said, not caring much. "Although my family doesn't have much money, it is still no problem for you to study. You don't have to worry about this." "No, Dad," said Scrooge. "It's John who's in trouble." "Oh," said old Joseph. "Tell me." John's father told John that he could no longer provide for John's tuition. Moreover, he said that John was old enough and it was time to earn his own money to support himself. Scrooge said, "It's not easy for their family." Mother Laura interjected, "Joseph, they'll just saved our son. We have to help his son. They have a lot of family members and few people who can work. It is really difficult. Well, John should graduate in June this year. We must help him no matter what. At least let him get a diploma." "Mother, John is not going to go to high school anymore. A high school diploma is of no use anyway," said Scrooge. "Well, John is looking for something to do, right?" Old Joseph said, "This kid is sensible. It's just that it's not difficult to find a job now, but it's not easy to find something better. I know a few regular customers." "Dad," Scrooge interrupted Joseph, "John wants to go to business school first and learn to keep accounts. He said that there is a shortage of people who can keep accounts. If you learn this, you will be paid more." "That's true. John is such a thoughtful kid. If he can be a bookkeeper, he can earn $5 or $6 a month. Not only is it enough for himself, but he can also help Eliza. However, it seems that the tuition of business school is not cheap. John wants to borrow money from us." Joseph said, "Yes, Dad." Scrooge said, "The tuition fee is $40.